All right, U.S. history classes, as promised, here's your fall final review. In this review, I will focus on the multiple choice questions while giving you some major hints as to what you should be studying for the short answers and essay portion of this exam. So listen carefully, pause this as you go if you want to spend some time reflecting or studying certain parts. Don't forget to use this in conjunction with the Study Blue flashcards that I have created for you, and you can download at studyblue.com or download the app from your phone. Please also check the calendar on December 15th that has the review materials in case you need to see this online. We're going to start with the colonial era. Remember why the colonies are settled in the first place. England wants the same thing that every imperial nation wants at this time, and that's glory. They want power. They want to spread their religion and their ideals. That's where the God part comes in. And greed, which is, of course, gold. So the colonies are going to be very productive for England. One of the things that I would highlight is that mercantilism, which is the idea that you're exporting more than you're importing, is very important at this time to England. So the colonies are going to trade with each other, but the 13 British colonies will be basically sending all of their materials solely to England, and that mother country is going to make a lot of money. This will frustrate the colonies, and of course we're going to see this lead to revolution. The three distinct regions of the colonies are New England, the Middle Colonies, and the Southern Colonies. For this exam, I would focus primarily on the New England colonies, especially the types of things that occur for the New England economy to be successful. Remember that they focus on small farms, but their major industry is fishing, shipping, and lumber. I'm going to skip ahead to the Industrial Revolution. Mass production is very important. Remember, during the market revolution, we're moving to a time where people make things for themselves to where they are buying and selling goods from each other. So mass production is very important. If you are a cobbler, for example, and you're making shoes, you would go from making those shoes in your own home to maybe making them on an assembly line and working in a factory. There are many events leading to westward expansion. Remember the idea of manifest destiny, that the United States would be able to spread its land and territory from sea to shining sea. So from the Atlantic to the Pacific, we're going to see an importance on exploring and claiming that territory for the United States of America. A couple of specific things that I want to point out. In 1830, we have Andrew Jackson's Indian Removal Plan, which essentially is going to be the first step in extinction towards the Native Americans. He's going to remove the 5 civilized tribes from Georgia and Florida and relocate them to Oklahoma. Another important piece, the Texas Revolution, 1835. Texas is going to become a state and gain its independence. This is later going to lead to the Mexican-American War, in which we do gain most of our southwestern territory. If you recall from class, I will suggest that you look at a map and be able to locate Texas on a map of America. In 1849, we have the California Gold Rush. This mining frontier is very important to the economy of the West, and we're going to start to see the settlement of California and merchants who supply products to Westerners. So this is another important piece. Also, again, leading to further extinction of the Native Americans. In 1862, we see the Homestead Act. During the Civil War, we lose about 600,000 of our men, roughly. And we're going to see President Lincoln initiate the Homestead Act to make America more appealing to immigrants and to Easterners who he would like to move west. So the Homestead Act will give 160 acres of land to white men 21 years of age and up. And the idea is that they can farm it or produce it for about 5 years and make it productive. Finally, we have the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad in 1869, which links the eastern and western economies. And it's really kind of the backbone of America. This is going to play an important role in business in the West and later in the Civil War when we see, into the railroad industry. And so we will see the country becoming increasingly linked at this time, and we're also going to see this contribute to the extinction of Native Americans in the sense that as the railroad is built, it's going to go through Native American lands, and tourists are even given the opportunity to shoot buffalo while on the train, further leading to the buffalo extinction. I'm going to skip big business in the West for now. I think that the most important thing to remember about business in the West is that the mining frontier leads us to California. Again, the Transcontinental Railroad is going to encourage people to move west and link the Western and Eastern economies. Finally, we're going to have my favorite president, Teddy Roosevelt, come in and bust up trusts in the early 1900s. Roosevelt's going to reform business in the progressive era. And for one thing, he will end monopolies in this country with some legislation. Remember, a monopoly is when one country has complete control over an entire industry. We've been looking at some economic waves without really knowing it this year. One of the most important historical upsets, of course, is during the Great Depression and the stock market crash of 1929. The crash occurs because we have this period of consumerism in the Roaring '20s. People are going to speculate by buying several stocks on credit. By buying on credit, people are living beyond their means, and so when that stock market crashes in 1929, we're going to see quite a change for people who had gained a lot more freedoms, including women. The stock market crash is the most significant piece of the Great Depression. It's the beginning, and again, these are some of the reasons. People were speculating with buying stocks and buying on credit, living beyond their means. The Great Depression is characterized by high unemployment, bank failures, business failures, and of course, Mother Nature's attack, which is the Dust Bowl. It's important to remember that two presidents had very different outlooks, and I would suggest that you study this for a short answer as well as your multiple choice. The Great Depression was happening over a period of years where Hoover and Franklin Delano Roosevelt were in office. Hoover advocated an economist theory named Friedrich Hayek, and we've talked about this as the ice cream theory or the trickle-down theory. And if we remember the term laissez-faire, Hoover thought that the Great Depression would sort of work itself out. The laissez-faire, hands-off philosophy is a lot like the trickle-down philosophy that we see later with Ronald Reagan, in that maybe if you provide cuts to wealthy business owners, all of those benefits will slowly start to trickle down. But again, it's important to remember that Hoover applied the Hayek's theory, so remember those two H's, Hoover and Hayek, the laissez-faire policy. FDR comes in, however, and advocates a different sort of theory, the Keynesian economic theory, which is a pump spending theory. If you put more money into the economy and you use federal dollars to create work programs, it's going to put Americans back to work and we'll get out of the Great Depression. So he called this program the New Deal. You can see in this cartoon here, he has several working programs over here in this corner. These are all the remedies, if you will, for the Great Depression. A couple of the programs, like the Works Progress Administration, or the WPA, were very important to the New Deal, and some of those might appear on your exam. Ultimately, World War II is what ends the Great Depression because it helps people put people back to work to help support the war effort. In post-World War II America, we see the rise of suburbia, especially when people are coming back from the war, and we see a baby boom. As women are returning home from working in the factories, as men are returning home from war, of course, they're going to want to start a family. So because of the baby boom of post-World War II America, we're going to start to see a rise in consumerism. If you think about this, just from your own family's perspective, if you have a large family, maybe you have a minivan and a dishwasher and a washing machine. These are all consumer pieces that would have been very important to families in the 1950s. As they increase their family size, they're going to need more stuff. We also see an increase in consumer goods and also those goods changing every year. For example, Chevy and Ford might have a new car model every year. So this is an increase in America's materialism. This is sort of the ideal time when we see the American dream playing out for some people. Not all people, of course. When we talk about the American dream, it's important to remember that often African Americans were left out of the opportunities that allowed them to live in the suburbs, like Levittown. In the 1960s, we have the Great Society. I'm going to tell you that's probably not very important for this particular exam, so let's skip it. In the 1970s and 1980s, we have a couple of important things that happened. One we didn't really discuss much in class because we'll do that later as we talk about the Carter years. But in the 1970s, we have an energy crisis when the oil-producing countries of the world enact an embargo on the United States. This leads to very long gas lines and a lot of conflict and high gas prices for Americans. And again, this is the OPEC embargo. President Reagan is our president in the 1980s, and he advocates Hayek's theory, as did Hoover, in terms of social program funding. So he sort of has a hands-off approach to economic busts and economic downtimes, and believes in the trickle-down theory of economics, which is really a theory that most of the GOP supports today. Tax cuts for the wealthy, just like at the top of our ice cream cone, are going to encourage investment, which then would stimulate the economy. For example, wealthy business owners might get a tax cut and then hire a manager, who would in turn hire minimum wage workers. So Reagan also applies Hayek's theory, and that's something that you will want to know. Finally, we're going to switch to Native American history. Natives are killed off mostly by disease. Great Britain is going to have the worst relationship with Native Americans, mostly because they want to settle on their land. Threats to natives besides disease include the destruction of the buffalo. Here we have the picture of the Transcontinental Railroad running the buffalo populations amok. That's going to take away culture as well as forcing tribes from their lands and onto reservations. This here is a picture of the Trail of Tears. You might want to know this picture for a short answer. In the Indian Removal Act of 1830, again, Andrew Jackson is going to force Native Americans from Georgia and the Florida area to Oklahoma along the Trail of Tears. He does this because he thinks it will benefit them. They can keep their culture out west, which we know does not actually happen, and whites can settle on their lands. Ultimately, the Indian Wars are going to be one big part of the failure to fulfill our promise of equality to Native Americans. Things that you might want to include in, say, an essay question would include the Dawes Act, which is similar to the Homestead Act, but requires natives to swear loyalty to the United States to claim their land. The Battle of Little Bighorn, which was the last significant Native American victory against the U.S. government, where Custer was killed. And finally, the Battle of Wounded Knee, which marks the end of the Indian Wars and the last conflict between natives and whites. Modern Native American organizations like AIM have tried for many years to remedy some of these issues. They've tried to bring to light some of the cultural issues that Native Americans have faced. We'll start very quickly. I have a minute and a half to do African Americans. Don't forget that the Middle Passage is the segment of the Triangle Trade which brings Africans to America for enslavement. Your abolitionists, Harriet Beecher Stowe, is going to anger a lot of Southerners with Uncle Tom's Cabin. Harriet Tubman is going to try to get enslaved people to Africa along the Underground Railroad. Many other abolitionists are working hard in the system and throughout and out of the system to end slavery. Nat Turner is going to be one of our more famous African Americans to combat slavery by killing several plantation owners in a rebellion. Causes of the Civil War. We will probably wrap up here and then start part 2 of your review. Causes of the Civil War include the Missouri Compromise, where Maine enters the Union as a free state and Missouri enters as a slave state. This keeps the balance of slave and free states in Congress. Don't forget that you may have to identify Maine on a map. Bleeding Kansas, or the violent confrontations between anti-slavery and slavery groups, will also be on your map. Causes of the Civil War. I would say that the election of 1860 is really the straw that breaks the camel's back. Lincoln is not even on the ballot in some southern states, but still becomes president. So South Carolina, also on your map, is going to be the first to secede from the Union. Dred Scott could be used in an essay question about the promise of equality. We will stop here and upload video part 1 and begin the next piece in just a moment.